Afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's well. Welcome back to the channel for another stream. And yeah, the manager situation at Leicester City. Obviously, yesterday was reported by the Mail Sport about Russell Martin. And yeah, Van Nistelrooy's future has been well up in the air, hasn't it, regarding what would happen next. And some probably would have gave the inkling of, could he have actually stayed? Should we have kept him? Give him a time in championship. Someone say, yeah, get rid. Look at how this season's gone. We're going to discuss it all. We're going to discuss the two names that have been mentioned today, Danny Rohl, Russell Martin. And yeah, we're going to let you guys discuss what you guys want to discuss as well. If you guys have got any other names you want to throw in there, be sure to let me know. Yeah, we're going to chat. Chat about Ruud van Nistelrooy, chat about Danny Rohl, Russell Martin, get everything into context. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the stream. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and you haven't subscribed already. Please get down and do so. It'd help me out massively if you can do that. And yeah, let's chat. Hello, Scott. How are we? Can't say I'm surprised after the events this season. Hopefully the rumours about Russell Martin does not come true. Well, it's not my ideal appointment. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Danny Rohl, I think, would be a better fit, if I'm honest. But then again, has Danny Rohl got Premier League experience? Probably not. But the thing is, you can't kind of look at the Premier League at this minute in time. You got more look into the Championship, of where we are as a club. You got points deduction bloody looming over us and all that, you know what I mean? So you've got to sort of put everything into context and say, well, these are the only managers we can only look at because of the situation we're in. You know what I mean? We had a situation before when Brendan Rodgers got sacked, and then no manager wanted to come because of the situation we were in. I think we could have ended up fucking Jesse Marsh. So then we ended up with Dean Smith. We then went left field. After Dean Smith had brought in Enzo Maresca, people are like, what's the style of football? What's this? What's that? And obviously we knew that he'd obviously worked with Pep. And Enzo took his role at Leicester, got us up from the Championship to the Premier League. And then we went from Enzo ball, which was a base of possession-based football. Obviously, you had like the Callum Doyles and Vestergaard and Fass who'd played a long 50-yard balls or something like that to get the wingers running down the right and left. And yeah, Ricardo then played an inverted from a right back into the centre midfield role. And then Enzo were more, obviously, not a lot of people enjoyed Enzo's football, but it got us back to where we wanted to be, which was the main target in the end. But it's the club wouldn't pay $3 million for Corberán. They won't pay £4 million for Danny Rohl. Yeah, this is the issue, armchair, isn't it? You know, we've got ourselves in a real pickle, haven't we? But it's our own doing. This is it. We can't blame anybody else but ourselves. You know, how a lot of mismanagement, a lot of bad decision making and stuff like that have got us in the situation where we are today. 2 relegations in 3 seasons because of how bad things have been done. The problems have just been mounting up. They've been overlooked. They've not been sorted. And like you say, if you don't sort your problems, they get worse, don't they? So the thing is, a lot of managers are going to look at Leicester and think, I don't want that. I'm not interested in that. They're going to look at the points deduction scenario, PSR and everything like that and think, yeah, it's not my cup of tea. You know, Sean Dyche just wouldn't even look at Leicester where points deduction anyway, I don't think. You know, maybe we could go more left field again. I remember talking to Manny yesterday about managers, and he said maybe we go a bit more left field with names that are not out there, more of a name that, you know, maybe a young up and coming manager, more, you know, because the more better names you go for, and the teams that, you know, like a Man United go for and something like that, but then you kind of go for a manager who's more left field, and you'd think to yourself, well, okay, then would this guy be going Man United in the future? Because if you hired Russell Martin, there's no doubt bloody Man United are going to be interested, because they're not. Do you get what I mean? They're not going to be interested, you know. So you know you're not going to lose him to a bigger team. So take a risk with Edin Terzic. Yeah, Edin Terzic. Was he the one at Borussia Dortmund? I think that's the guy I was looking at. Without having a full in-depth details of points deduction management plans, transfer embargo, I can't see the financial benefit of getting rid of Ruud to bring someone else in. This is the issue, isn't it? You know, we talk about PSR quite well, and the last PSR day of the year before the new PSR starts is end of June, which is June the 30th, you know. So to stay in PSR and not crucify ourselves even more, it's sacking Ruud on July the 1st. But then you're leaving yourself too late to bring in another manager to get to know the players, transfer plan, whatever it is next season you've got to plan for in the Championship. And so it's a sticky situation we find ourselves in. And like I say, the board have got a lot of answers to answer. So answer for. It's, you know, Russell Martin is not my ideal situation. It isn't. I think we can get better. I don't think he's better than what Ruud is, if I'm honest with you. You know, if you had to pick between Martin and Ruud, you'd probably stick with Ruud. That's the problem, isn't it? Do you get what I mean? But you've got to find better. You have. And this is where we've got to look at going forward. What is the plan? What is the future initiative to the plan? You know, what is the sort of substance that you actually want to provide for next season? You know, you've got to sort of look at these different things and sit down and properly go in depth with it. Because you can't just... The thing is with us, we seem to be going very much of just anybody, bringing anybody in. I mean, you're supposed to specifically go for one style of football, and Leicester's just gone for anyone, you know. You've gone from Enzo ball and Steve Cooper ball, two different styles of football completely. You've got 120 circuit, you know what I mean? 120 degrees. So, and then you've gone from Cooper ball to Ruud ball, and they're different the plays again. So what the thing is, you ask the board is, what specific style do you want to play? What players can you bring in to fit that style? And you've got to obviously bring in a manager who can fit the style with the team as well. You've obviously got your players, Mongers, Fatawoos. You've got the Mavridis. You've got Will Alves next season. You've got Ben Nelson. You've got to find a style that fits not just your current squad, but players that actually come in. Do you get what I mean? This Martin deal was done weeks ago. You're probably right. And this is it, you know. Russell Martin was very more, how do I put it, more aggressive style of Enzo ball. Do you get what I mean? They'd keep the ball, and then the fullbacks would get sort of caught out quite a lot, you know. You're playing it from the goalkeeper to the defenders, and then you go in defenders straight out wide and getting caught with it. With Enzo, we're an old different approach of you play from the goalkeeper to the defender in midfield to then out on the wing. Do you get what I mean? So it's different in every way. Scott, I think it's a better plan to stick with Ruud, sell the superstars, keep a load of leaders, role models for the academy and for the thing. Yeah, afternoon chat. So Ruud is going. Ruud is going, yes. He will be leaving Leicester City Football Club. We will be appointing somebody else. The club claim to say that we're not going to disrespect Ruud by progressing talks with anybody else. And do you believe that? I don't for 1 second. I do think we have been talking to others, and this is the situation we find ourselves in. But now going to Russell Martin, back to Russell Martin, the squad that he had at Southampton, he had to sell like the Tellers and players like that, Ward-Prowses and that. Yeah, he obviously had to get rid. Then he had a good Southampton side to get him back up. He did. He got him back up through the playoffs. But Russell Martin is a very much championship-based manager. And, it worked in the championship, but didn't work in the Prem. Because in the Premier League, you've got to, with styles of football, you can't just stick to one style of football. You've got to have a different identity to go with in the Premier League as well as that style. You've got to be able to adapt, sort of converse into another style if it's not working, With Martin, I found it Southampton, where he'd play the same way, but then if they're losing, he'd stick with the same style. And it'd carry on, it'd get worse, we're breaking records left, right, and centre, the worst records. There were a Southampton fan yesterday messaged me, and he said, Jack, well, useless tactically, and he's so arrogant, he won't change. This is it. And I always find that with managers anyway, when they're doing well in jobs, they won't change. They're very stubborn. I remember Brendan, when he first come, his football worked perfectly, but then it sort of went downhill a bit. Do you know what I mean? So some of the big owners will have to be paid off to get them out the door. Armchair, this is the thing, mate. We've got so many high earners at the football club. You've gave bloody Connor Cody 70 grand a week. Vestergaard's on a bit. Danny Ward's on some bloody substantial amount of money. And, obviously it will take the money off the wage bill now that Vardy's gone, which is, some would say 140 grand a week. But this is the thing with the board. They've been handing out these Champions League style wages. Do you get what I mean? They've been really handing them out and this was a process at the start to pay these players. But, you're paying more wages out than what you're bringing in revenue. Do you get what I mean? And this is why Leicester City's in the mess that they are, because they've not learned. They've just carried on doing it. And then you've gone from bringing Connor Cody and Harry Winks in are going to be on big wages anyway. But then you've all of a sudden gone, wow, okay, we'll give you a bonus. And it's like, yeah, all right, well, this is the issue with it, and I was crazy. Manny, if you want to come in, mate, and chat with me about Danny Rohl, mate, and Russell Martin, feel free. I'll send you the link. It's apparently a thing they teach new managers skills to stick with your style of play and don't change things. Well, everyone plays a different way, don't they? Well, we claim they do. Obviously, everyone likes to play the Pep Guardiola way, don't they? Which is very much how it is. Do we really have personnel for Martin's football? Does the board seriously have the money or will to buy players to support it? That's questions that we ask all the time, Caleb, innit? We looked at Van Nistelrooy. Could they have backed him? They should have. They promised him money and they didn't. But you're paying all these big wages out, time and time again. And this is the hierarchy itself. Do you get what I mean? It's crazy. Why not promote the likes of Andy King as manager for a season? Do you know what, Scott? I wouldn't rely on Andy King. He's a club legend. I don't want him to tarnish his bloody legacy because of silly decisions by the board. Do you get what I mean? I never understood selling an informed Tom Cannon to replace him with nobody. Do you know what, Kyle? It's a weird situation, mate. Tom Cannon, I don't think would have been good enough for the Premier League. I mean, I think he's only scored one for Sheffield United. Or was it like two? He's scored 1 or 2 goals for Sheffield United this season. They want a refund. I think with Sheffield United, we've kind of had the pants down a bit, haven't they, regarding that. £10 million we sold him for, and then we want a £3 million bonus on top if they get promoted. So Leicester's had a win-win there, but the only striker we're left with at the club now is Patterson Daka. And it just hasn't worked out for Patterson Daka. He just isn't good enough. So Give me 5. Yeah, cool. Basically, they paid the wages to bounce straight back up. The thing is, Leicester, I believe they paid £30 million more in wages than the second club in the Championship. And that's crazy. That is absolutely madness. And this is what gets you in the pickle that you do. Because the format and the mistakes you keep making, they keep doing it time and time again. And people say to yourself, sticking with this again, with these same people and not changing it, is it going to get better? It's not. They're going to be making the same mistakes. So the only way you type of fix these problems is focusing on what got you in this mess in the first place and who are the people involved. So you kind of get rid of them people, move them on, and bring someone in who will properly advise it and run it properly, who know what they're doing. We're a club full of broken promises, cannot get a game. Yeah, Daka won't cut it. I'd rather play Facundo as the striker. Facundo won't be here next season, though, will he, Armchair? Let's be honest. He's not going to be a Leicester player next season. He's going to be going back to Brighton. So I'm not going to sit here and be deluded and say he's going to sign for Leicester City next season. And the thing is, the manager, whoever it is now, it's a PSR problem again. Like I said, managers are going to look at Leicester and think, nah. So you're probably going to end up with about 1 or 2 managers who will probably take the job. Do we go for someone up and coming? Someone who can work with the youth, work with a better format, a different way of thinking. This is the issue. I'll get Manny in when he's sorted his bloody microphone out. Louis Barry on loan. There we go. Manny, how are we?
Good, mate. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Good. Me and you are at it today, aren't we? Like that 4th stream in about 24 hours.
Well, you've got to push the initiative, haven't you?
That's it. There is no tomorrow.
Developing things, but yeah, my signal weren't exactly great yesterday because I used my phone. I kept switching between Wi-Fi and bloody 5G on my phone.
I saw you chuckling away last night a few times.
Do you know what? When you're like battling with somebody, it's like, yeah, where's the referee going to come into this? It's like, nah, you can't get in the middle of it.
All fun and games.
Definitely Mavididi as plays a forward. Is John Rudkin up and coming in terms of managerial experience? Well, I think he's managed the club once in one game, John Rudkin, I believe. One game he's managed at Leicester City Football Club.
I think he might have done it more than once,
Has it?
I think he's done it like on one of those temporary, emergency situations a few times. I'll double check that.
The thing is, if John Rudkin's got us in this mess, give him the job. Let him solve it. You know what I mean? Let him do.
At least you have to come into a press conference and answer questions, right?
Yeah, you see what I mean? It's a win-win, isn't it? He can do the team whatever he likes. He can bring in all these Southampton players. He can go and answer the questions.
Well, look. We beat Southampton 9-0. We buy a couple of their defenders. So why not just carry on that? And, we beat Southampton 9-1 on aggregate last season. So let's get their manager too.
Yeah, get him in. We need an out-and-out forward. Manny, I mean, let's talk about, obviously, today's news. Russell Martin, we'll talk about him in a minute. Van Nistelrooy is expected to leave after the final game of the season, but Leicester yet to decide who they want to replace him with. Russell Martin and Danny Rohl in the frame, but reluctant to progress talks with either out of respect to Ruud until his exit is agreed. I don't believe they have. I kind of believe that they have spoken to people because they're going to have to sort of bring somebody else in. So they're not going to sit and wait around or twiddle the thumbs, even though they have been doing with all these problems so far anyway. But Russell Martin and Danny Rohl, we'll get on to them in a minute, but talk to me about Ruud. Obviously, he's managed 26 games. He's lost 18, won 5, drawn 3. Where do you think it went wrong for Ruud, Manny? I mean, people talk about the squad, broken promises, and this, that, and the other. I mean, where did it swiftly go wrong for you with Van Nistelrooy?
There's a few different moments, actually. I think the first moment it went wrong was actually a bit of bad luck when Ndidi got injured against Brighton. Do you remember, we beat West Ham at home. I think Ndidi might have been man of the match in that game. And then the next game we played Brighton and we were 2 down and we scored 2 late goals and got 2-2 and we got a point. And then in that game, Mads went down as well. So we just got 4 points in his first 2 games. A bit of a new manager bounce perhaps, but we still got 4 points.
Yeah.
Then you lose your keeper who was on fire the first half of this season. He was keeping us in games so many times. That Arsenal game, he was absolutely unreal. And then if you lose those 2 players and you've already got Fatawu injured, suddenly the replacement was, remember Jakob was injured for the very next game, so he couldn't come for the very first game. So he put Danny Rohl in. And we've been down this road before.
Yeah, greatest replacement.
And so, and losing Ndidi and losing Hermans at the time were an absolute killer. So it killed a bit of momentum, and then you get that first bad result, and there's the snowball stuff starts happening. Like, as a manager, you'd probably think, well, good job I got the transfer window coming up, because do you know what? I know this kid in Holland. I know this lad in Holland who will help us out. I know this player here. I've got a manager who can do me a favour with a player from there. All right, I just need a few quid. And, we can get 2 or 3 bodies in and give ourselves a fighting chance. There's no money left. What do you mean there's no money left? You just said 20, 30, 3. We got 3 million quid. I mean, I'm good, but 3 million quid. I mean, I can't turn water into wine, right? I mean, what do you want me to do? Okay, 3 million quid. This is like, I just moved from Holland. I was at PSV last season. I've just moved country. And you told me that there was money to spend. My players are injured. I need bodies. And you can't give me anything to work with. Look what I've got. I've got Vestergaards and I've got Ayus and Reeds. Then maybe if someone is clever, they'd turn around and say, well, you're playing them, right? Don't play them then. Play somebody else. He says, no. This is the best that we have. So we'll crack on with this. Lose. And then at some point, you just probably get a bit numb to it, like we all get, don't you? You just, another loss. You don't even get angry anymore at some point. You just acceptance of it. Now, I like to think that there has been some kind of change after relegation. Like, you do, it does, in a weird way, it makes you feel better that it's done now. You don't have to worry about it anymore. It's already happened. So, and we have played a bit better, but we've played better against Forest, who are really struggling at recent times. Yeah. Ipswich, who are awful. And Southampton, Russell Martin's old team, who are the second worst team that's ever played in the Premier League. Fact. Yeah. So I wouldn't go overboard about the recent results. But at the same time, Ruud has been dealt. He's been dealt a bit of a raw deal. He could have, in theory, if he'd had his say, if he was appointed last summer, some people say, if he'd have got the job first and he'd been given the money to spend with players and it wasn't going right, then maybe you could bring Cooper in to try and keep you up if it was going wrong. We actually did it the wrong way around. And I see the logic of that. But Ruud has had plenty of time. And for the life of me, I just can't see why you would pick, at the moment, Cody over a Coley, why you wouldn't be giving Monga more minutes, why you were picking Cordova Reed and Ayus for so long and Mavididi sat on the bench. I never understood why you never tried Buonanotte as a 10. He is a 10. He's not a right winger. Why are you playing him at right wing all the time? 1 minute it was Victor Christiansen. He was awful. It's Luke Thomas. I didn't think he was particularly great. I know others would disagree. It's just a mismatch. Woyo. You actually signed Woyo. He's your guy. He's the only player that goes, Ruud wanted me.
Yeah.
He comes on the pitch a few times. How did he look to you, Jack?
I thought he was good.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I thought, this guy's got something about him.
He played well against Ahmad in the United away game. 1-on-1, he was really good, shutting down one of the hottest wingers at the time. And, we're losing every week, and the guy doesn't see a game, not one start. Like, we haven't seen us. We've been struggling at left back. At times, we've been struggling at right back this season too. And the guy must be thinking, Why did I move over for this? I was sitting there in Italy, having my nice little espresso in the morning, a nice bit of lunch, lovely bit of weather, and you're coming here sitting on the bench, you're having to watch the team lose every week, and I can't get a look in. So there are pros, there's good things that he's had in his sort of, to defend himself, saying, no, I wasn't given money and the rest of it. But at the same time, some of his team selections, actually most of his team selections, ugh.
I was very much annoyed with his team selections. You've got better players that you can use to your own advantage here, but he never did. He started using them when you're relegated. It's like, why now? Like, why are you playing Monga now, but you could have played him sooner? You've got nothing to play for. You're still like 15 points behind, 16 points behind, whatever it is, we're down, whatever. Just go out and just give them a chance. Maybe they'll change a game here and there. You've had different players, Koulibaly, who haven't been seen since Brentford at home since he gave that bloke concussion. You need physical players like that, players who are passionate, who want to prove themselves. And this is where I kind of look at the team. You've got a Kohli. I think he looked good on his debut. But then, these are the players you need to be effective. But then you're looking at him thinking, yeah, Wout Faes, Connor Cody ahead of him, and I'm just like, okay, what do you do now? And then you got Mavididi sat on the bench. Mavididi can be if and but he can't. I think he's kind of struggled a bit in the Premier League to get going like he did in the Championship. But then you've got one striker you're using that one striker time and time again. Probably Vardy deserved a rest. He did in some games that he could have said, you know what, we'll bring you off the bench at times. But then Leicester were like, yeah, we need to rely on you here, Jamie. You're the man to get us out of the mess. But what does Ruud do? Defensive football. If you can't, and then they can't defend. So how do you change it? We'll go from a back four to a back five. And if back five's not working, go back to a back four. Ruud hasn't helped himself at all. Some people say, yeah, but if you've not been back to the transfer window, you've got to get the best of what you've got. And this is what the resources he's been handled. Yes, he's been handled a shit pack of cards, and I get it. But, you're still not doing what you say you're supposed to be doing. You remind me of when Steve Cooper used to say, you know what, this is the great style of football. This is what I'll use. This is what you're going to see from me. And then you look at the matches, and it's like, yeah, this ain't prime Barcelona. Where's Ronaldinho in that? When's Jordan Ayew turning into bloody Samuel Eto'o and whatever? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, I was kind of scratching my head at times with Van Nistelrooy, and people say, yeah, you've got to give him a chance. Well, relegated, aren't we? He's had more than an opportunity. The guy should have been sacked way before now. But what's annoyed me is the club have left it so long. They should have sacked him as soon as they got relegated, but they've decided, you know what, we're leaving it. PSR scaring us away again.
There is a bit of a reason for that, Jack. There is a bit of a reason for that. But imagine that they did sack Ruud. The first question a new manager's going to ask is, what's the PSR situation?
Yeah.
And the answer is going to be, we don't know.
Like Graham Potter did.
So the manager's going like, I can't come to you until I know what I've got to work with. So why sack Ruud, then spend more money trying to get someone else in for a couple of months, maybe, to tide you over. You end up paying it twice, and we're already in a PSR mess. So that wastes five. No one's going to do it for, no one's going to do it for a relatively small amount of money. If you want me to embarrass myself and take this team for a few months, you're going to have to give me £500,000. You don't need to spend the extra expense. And what we did do with Cooper last time is, I think we panicked a bit, like about pre-season was coming up, and we had to get everything lined up for pre-season, and so we need to appoint someone quickly. If they had taken a bit more time before appointing Cooper, then perhaps they would have thought it through better and not made such a panicky quick decision. So I'm not in the camp of, there's an urgency to get rid of Ruud today and replace him, tomorrow. I think what we do need to do, well, for a start, we should have already done that thinking that if ever any of our managers goes, whether it's Ruud or Enzo or Cooper or whatever, we already know who our next three preferred guys are. So you don't have to do the thinking. You've got a plan already in mind, and you just have to execute that plan. That's what you've been doing for the last 6 months, 1 year. You're always doing that. Same with players. Like, if any of our players get told, if someone buys our right wing, these are the next 3 right wings that are we ready to replace them. They're the ones we're going to try and get. You already have that stuff in place. But considering we don't do it that way,
we don't plan.
We don't plan that way. We react.
We've got a director of football who couldn't plan a bloody birthday party.
It appears we're not proactive, we're reactive. We wait.
It is Leicester.
We wait for the situation to happen and then go, shit. What? What are we gonna do? Oh right, okay. Yeah, we'll get him done.
Yeah, quickly.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. A bit. It feels a bit like that. So don't do that again right now. There is a fairly long summer ahead. It's a massive, massive, massive appointment. Any manager worth his salt is going to want to know what the financial situation is, what kind of players are going to leave. Once you get all those questions out, like who is going to leave, we've got our own ideas of who we think is going to go, but we don't 100% know exactly who's going to go yet. So get through those things. Let players who are going to be sold. If you are going to get rid of Ruud at the end of the season when his contract, just pay him up. And then use the first part of the summer to really think it through. Do your detail, do your homework, do your due diligence on every little detail. And then hopefully some of those PSR situations are a bit clearer. And then managers are more likely to give you a serious conversation.
You know what the club's going to do after the sacking, though, don't you? Straight away, think back. Russell Martin, hello. You know what the situation is. It's like they'll sack him and it's like, yeah, we've got to react to it. He'll start sweating under pressure and that. He'll be like, John, get on the phone to Southampton quick. Have they got Russell Martin's number?
It seems like that's going to be the case, isn't it? With all the rumours and the rest of it. Because, he's free, he's around, he wants the job.
It's going to be a cheap appointment, a free appointment. Because they won't want to spend anything, with PSR going on and whatever. But
I don't think you need to spend, actually. I mean, a lot of the guys that managers who, for example, Thomas Frank when they got him at Brentford, or Iriola or Bournemouth, or Fabian Hertzler at Brighton, or even Oliver Glasner when they bought him. These guys aren't on massive amounts of money. You're not paying them money that like Spurs were paying Mourinho or Conte or some of these big names. So I don't really think managers financially is a big concern. Like managers don't get. Put it this way, it's like not even a quarter of the price of Harry Winks. For example. So I wouldn't worry about the necessarily cost of it, whatever manager package does cost. Just get the right guy. That's the most important thing. And wherever you will end up paying him, it will seem insignificant if he does what you hope he does do.
I will say this. This might sound a bit wild, coming from the chairman of the Danny Rohl in Society for the last 12 months. Rohl's behaviour recently has been very poor. Concentrating turn for him.
Well, I'm not going to pretend to know a huge amount of Danny Rohl. I don't watch a lot of Sheffield Wednesday. I watch a bit of them on the EFL highlights package, and I've seen how they've been doing in the table. And I get it. He was, a team that got promoted a few years ago, was struggling down the relegation battles, and he stabilised them to a mid-table team. He's young, he's German, he's smart. He was Ralph Hasenhüttl's assistant manager. He was also Ralph Hasenhüttl's assistant manager when we beat them 9-0. But still, he's young. He fits a kind of bill that I like. My worry is that I think you can over-egg championship improvement. So if you're taking a team from the bottom of the championship to mid-table, people think you've done a really good job. My worry is Steve Cooper took a team from the bottom of the championship and got them promoted.
Yeah.
That didn't work out too great for us. I mean, Frank Lampard also has taken Coventry from 17th to 5th or 6th in the table. 5th, I think they were in the table at the end.
Yeah.
So I don't really want to say that championship improvement is enough by itself to dazzle me. What I want to see is somebody doing a pretty much a miracle in the championship. That would dazzle me. What I'd like to see is somebody who is who's like the manager that I want, but has done it in a similar situation somewhere else that's competitive. So I'm not talking about getting a manager from, the Albanian league, for example, just to pick, sorry, Albania, I'm not being harsh on your league, but, I would rather stick to good, solid, traditional countries where there's competitive football. Germany, Spain, Portugal, France to an extent too. Those kind of countries. The football's a little bit different to our football, but you will get situations where there's a big team in Germany, for example, in Bayern or Dortmund, and all these other clubs have got to work out how to play against this big team. You know, they dominate the league. How do we compete for Europe in that environment? How do we, get the right type of players and stuff? So if Brighton can find talent in Bundesliga B and think the guy who's the best of Bundesliga B is good enough for my Premier League team, and then despite the fact that he's 33 years old, he comes into the Premier League with no experience. He's 33. He's come from the B League. How's he done this season? Rock solid job. Yeah. Rock solid job. Not a problem, because he's bright enough. So the skills that he had as a manager are translatable beyond Bundesliga B into the Premier League. Now, I once went to a seminar. I don't want to turn it into a... Sorry, Jack, I'm going on a bit here. But I once went to a seminar, football seminar at Highbury, long time ago, about sort of football data analysis. Over a decade ago now. And they were talking about where you find value as... A lot of it was Brentford when they were still in the Championship then. And they were talking about their plan, how we're going to get to the Premier League and how we're going to stay in the Premier League. And they basically said, look, we've done the mathematics of it, and Bundesliga B is very similar to the Championship in terms of quality, of standard of player and manager and the rest of it. But everything's a lot cheaper than the Championship even. So you can find really cheap players in Bundesliga B, the same in French League 2 as well. And you can basically put together Championship quality outfits on a League 1 or a League 2 budget. And this is what we're going to try and do to get Brentford into the Premier League. Now, as it worked out, that's exactly what they did do.
Yeah.
And they found players like Ivan Toney from Peterborough. Yeah. They bought him from Peterborough. They ended up selling him for 40 million after he scored a hat full of goals and got them promoted and kept them up for a few seasons. Brilliant bit of business. Did the job. You've still made a fortune on him. He likes to have a gamble himself, but we're not going to go into that. So, look, my point is they had a very clear idea of where you can find value. Value is a key word. Yeah. So I think we can also find value in managers in Bundesliga B, League 2, Portuguese League or Portuguese League 2, Spanish League 2. And for poor people saying, why are people going to leave these clubs to come to Leicester? We're terrible, our ownership is struggling, we just got relegated again. Leicester are a worldwide story, the greatest story that ever told. We have a £100 million training ground, we have 30,000 plus, we've completed domestic football in England since the year 2000. How many clubs have done that? Spurs are going crazy over one trophy. We've won 5 since 2000. So don't underestimate the pull of Leicester. And Enzo Maresca had just won a treble with Man City. Just won a treble. He was willing to leave that treble-winning outfit to come to a relegated Leicester because he can see what every other manager will see out there. Leicester's a fantastic club with mostly fantastic support, with a real family vibe when we're at our best, with owners when they're at their best that really care. They don't try and rinse the fans, and they're not in it for money as such, they're in it for glory. And you can live a nice, peaceful life. You don't get hassled too much. It's not like London where the traffic's crazy. You can live a really good life. And then when it's time to move on from Leicester, we won't stand in your way. We'll get paid. You'll get paid. Everybody's happy. We move on. So I think Leicester, I would expect us to be in the Premier League next season, Jack, whoever we appoint. I don't know about you. But I think if you do that, if you understand those concepts of value and where you need to be looking, you'll come out with a wider list of names than the ones that we just keep getting recycled with. The only reason we get recycled with these names is because we've seen them in the English game. But there's a world of football out there. When we look for a player, we wouldn't just say limit your players to the Premier League or the Championship. You don't care where you get the player from. It's all about how good the player is, right? Same with a manager. I don't care where you get him from. It's about how good he is. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yesterday an Australian manager won the Europa League. Imagine where he's come from. He's come from the Australian League, the A-League, via Scotland. He's just won the Europa League. Imagine somebody 5-10 years ago saying, this guy in Australia should be the manager for my team. They'd laugh at you, wouldn't they?
Of course they would.
Who's laughing now?
Well, Leicester had choice when Steve Cooper was sacked. They weren't for someone for Van Nistelrooy, and the Premier League built on hype around him. I didn't see Leicester fans against the appointment. I think personally, we all know how good Ruud could be in the Championship. I would still pick Rohl over Ruud and Martin. I'd crawl over broken glass for it, but I do think there might be better options out there for us. I just think Rohl is a name Rudkin knows.
Very good point.
This is what they're going to go off, though, isn't it? It's names that people know about, and it's not somebody we've never heard of. Gray says he fully agrees. Hello. I don't think Hull City fans would agree with German Division 2 managers' theory.
It's not standard, like you can just pick anyone and you guarantee success. It's like players, right? They're going to be good ones and bad ones, and your job is to work out the difference.
Did they have Walter, right? Volta, whatever you pronounce his bloody name.
No, I mean, it's a bit of a fashion, aren't they? Like Daniel Farke, we've had David Wagner, Oliver Glasner, Fabian Hertzler. There is a reason for it. You know, Germans are generally bright people. They know how to organise things. You know, let's look at German car companies. They know how to, I drive a German car. They know how to make cars, right? They know how to do things properly, effectively. And they often punch above their weight internationally. I was watching, for some reason, I was watching the '86 World Cup final with West Germany against Maradona's Argentina. And then I remember Germany made the final in 1990. I was like, and then they made Euro '96 final. I'm like, God, they're always there.
Yeah,
sharp people.
I agree. You touch on the Premier League return. I mean, I don't physically think it can happen next season with everything that goes on regarding PSR and that, if I'm honest. It's about a rebuild next year, if I'm honest, getting everything right and maybe start with basics, start from basics, go again. And this is, I think, where we've got to go, Manny, to be fair, because I think if we did go straight back to the Premier League, we'd end up straight back down again. Because, you know, you can see how much of a distance there is now between the Premier and the Championship in sort of gulf. But Leicester's situation is very much deemed for a rebuild. They need it. I know the fans will want it. The owners have got to execute it, haven't they? Let's be honest. But you trust in the same people who have caused these problems with financially and that to do this situation. How do you even trust these people again? Because they've had many chances, but they've made many mistakes along that path to do it. Rudkin, for me, is needing to be moved elsewhere. You know, you need a proper football advisor in to come in this summer to really help Leicester along the way. And I think that's the only way we've got to go with this. Southampton have got Will Still from the French League and as their manager.
Well, he's
who played football manager.
If they haven't signed this guy right there, if they have not signed Will Still, we should be having a strong chat with Will Still immediately. He's an extremely bright young manager, a guy that had to work extremely hard to get where he is. People must have laughed at Will Still being a manager, and he's proved a lot of naysayers wrong. And not just that, I'm pretty sure I've seen a video of Will Still holding a team talk in Lens in France, in French, and not English people speaking French like they go on holiday, like Del Boy French. I mean fluent French. Will Still is a bright young manager, and I think I would 1,000% take him over Russell Martin.
If prepared right for the Championship, it's possible to stay up. But this is the thing, great. Everything comes with preparation. It's about preparing right and making the right moves. And with Leicester, they're not. This is why we are doing what we're doing, because we keep making them same mistakes. And you trust in the same people to make the right mistakes. It's hard to sort of look at. We tried staying up with the same back four we went down with. That's not good preparation. Exactly. So, one
of the only show I've done with Rob Tanner, I think we spoke a little bit about this, and I was sort of asking about
Go on.
when you try and find a manager, how can you go from 1 minute to Dean Smith, which is fine. There weren't many options then. Then when you have time, you come up with Enzo. Yeah. And then when Enzo's worked pretty well for you, you turn to Steve Cooper and you turn to now Ruud and on. You just keep zigzagging direction. 1 minute you're going this way, then you're going that way. Yeah. Now, along those zigzagging path, there was one smart, young, foreign manager, spoke English extremely well tutelaged, well coached, that was a left field appointment, right? Enzo Maresca, how many people must have said at the time, he's never managed anybody properly before. He hasn't got any experience. He's only done 14 games and Parma nearly went down and, blah, 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 blah. Like, what are you doing? There's all these experienced managers who can get us up. This guy's not... Board don't have a clue what they're doing.
Yeah.
Well, they did have a clue what they're doing because Enzo was brilliant. However, I wanted to know, how do you come... Like, when you have your meeting, how do you decide on Enzo 1 minute and then the next minute when Enzo goes, you just completely go away from it with Steve Cooper? And I think it was Rob that said that when they found Enzo, it wasn't them that found Enzo. It was a third party agent or football agency, or it was an extra source that they asked advice for, and the advice came back: have a look at this Enzo Maresca, Pep's assistant. The guy's brilliant, and they liked the advice and they took it. Whoever person gave you the nod about Enzo,
go and find him again.
Give him a bell.
Don't get Russell Martin on the bloody phone. Geez.
Cheeky WhatsApp. Thanks for Enzo. Got any others? Question mark. That would be better preparation than coming up with Russell Martin and some of the other names I've been hearing.
Yeah. This is our Leicester or as a team. I think anyone would have got us up last season, if I'm honest. No disrespect to Enzo. I think, Manny, me and you could have done a job last year with the squad that we had. If they'd be given that squad, the main source would have been promotion straight away. And that squad were capable of doing it. I know it had a bit of rough around the edges in the second half of the season.
It's a good squad. Good squad, that was.
Every team had a little blip, should we call it? But we all thought Enzo could potentially fall off, didn't we, last season? When it started to go a little downhill, we thought, well, how does he react? And the players had to have a meeting and everything like that to sort of arrange everything and talking of what worked before. And it did, But to lose Enzo in the circumstances that we did, to then go and... Your eyes are set on Graham Potter. There was last year. There was. And then we've sort of gone, Graham Potter started asking questions and we thought, we can't really do this. I'm sorry. And then Steve Cooper pulls out the blinder of bloody presentations. And it's like, Steve, this is yours. Go and do what you want with it. And it's crazy to go from Enzo ball to Steve Cooper ball.
It doesn't make sense, Jack. No. If you spend 46 games Monday to Sunday, and every time you touch a football, you do it in a very specific, trained, specialist way, and you have no
director of football.
Like you really think, okay, I found something here. Do you know, we're playing Man City ball in the Championship and it's working and we're winning all the time and we're going up and everybody's excited. And the question mark is, can we translate this into the Premier League? The only snippets of information we had to work out whether it would be translatable to the Premier League was Liverpool game in a cup, Bournemouth game in a cup and Chelsea game in a cup. And in all those three games, I think we lost to Liverpool, we beat Bournemouth and we lost to Chelsea, didn't we? But we looked good in all those three games at times against those teams. And they were all three away games as well. We were on their patch. It wasn't at our place. So it was very interesting to see, can Enzo work in the Premier League? And I was fascinated to see if that was going to be the case. But that was the question, will this style work? The players love it. Let's go and see. So when Enzo decides to go out of nowhere, why do you then just go, the system's wrong, it's not going to work, we need to find somebody else? A minute ago, when Enzo was in charge, you were more than happy with it. So why don't you just do exactly the same as you just did when you found Enzo? Get a smart, young assistant who knows the exact system that you want to play and get him in the room. So I suggested Willy Caballero. He's worked under Conte, he's worked under Ancelotti, he's worked under Guardiola, he's worked under Maresca. If Enzo thinks Willy Caballero is smart enough to be my assistant, then I think Willy Caballero is smart enough to be our manager. And we've already appointed assistants before. He's also Argentinian. And my dream team, Jack, you're going to love this. Guess who I wanted as Willy Caballero's assistant?
Go on.
Esteban Cambiasso.
Well, the guy who's got probably the most contacts in football. Do you know what? Yeah. Esteban Cambiasso would make a great director of football. He would.
Smart guy.
Yeah, he is. The players that he'd actually look at up and coming to come and help the team, he would be a great director of football. And I didn't even think of Esteban Cambiasso. I thought of him as Enzo's assistant, but I didn't think of him as a director of football until you said.
He's been at Real Madrid, he's been at Inter Milan, he's played for Argentina national team. If he has, and also the relationship between the manager and the director of football, or the manager and the assistant, whichever way you want to go with Cambiasso, they've got to be tight. They've got to be together, right?
Yeah.
And so when you've got your Argentinian buddy, and the Argentinian buddy's on the phone saying, calling his Argentinian clubs, going, that superstar young kid we've got, like doing Matthias Sule. Do you remember we were linked with him last year, and he didn't want to leave, and he was like, nah. He's like, I don't fancy Leicester. All of a sudden, this kid's going, you got Cambiasso, you got Willy Caballero. All right, let's do it.
When you've got when Steve Cooper rings you up over the Rossi, it's like nah. And then when they want to know about the sporting blueprint and everything like that, and then they mention John Rudkin, and John Rudkin puts his point across, it's like that ain't for me. And many players would have said that last season. It's like Leicester haven't got a proper sporting director with a vision, a plan, and this is why they didn't come. We could spend bloody a lot of money. We even offered him probably the world last season, Sule, but he thought, nah, I'd rather go with De Rossi. He went to Roma, didn't he? And then getting sacked not long after. And I bet he thought, if Leicester would have had a better manager and a better director of football, I probably could have gone to Leicester.
Look, the only reason people give, I say the only reason, that's a bit harsh. Okay, but one of the reasons people keep giving, say, Wayne Rooney a job is because his name is Wayne Rooney. So they think players will want to come and play for Wayne Rooney rather than Joe Bloggs, who used to be manager before. So we can attract some better quality talent than we had before. It doesn't always work out like that, but sometimes it does. You see a lot of times where players go, I love that guy. He's my hero. I always wanted to play for him. Sometimes it doesn't work out, and sometimes it does. But you're hoping that we've had a sprinkle of stardust in the past. Roberto Mancini played for us. Esteban Cambiasso. These were like players when we got them. I remember both players, those two in particular. Yeah. How the hell did we get him? Well, we got Mancini on loan at the time. I remember thinking, blimey, this guy's unbelievable. How have we got him on loan? When we signed Cambiasso, I was like, what a signing that is. Esteban Cambiasso coming at our club.
He scored on his debut. I remember.
He was a brilliant player for us, wasn't he?
Goal.
You could see he was like a manager on the pitch, Esteban Cambiasso. You go there, you stand over there, brother, you do this. He's organising everything all the time. He's your eyes and your ears on the pitch. So why don't we have him as our eyes and our ears off the pitch? He seems like a bright guy.
You're not wrong.
He's got the Leicester connection. He's got the Leicester affinity already. The fans already love the guy. He speaks English really well.
I should.
We could get a bugger load of brilliant young Argentinian kids in. We've seen with Benanotte. They got some talent, some of these young Argentinian boys. They don't mess around. They got fight, they got hunger, they got intensity, they want it. And normally not that we've ever signed an Argentinian that I can particularly remember apart from recent times. When we get some of these South American players, we always get it through Portugal or Spain. We'll buy it off Sporting Lisbon or a team like that. Get to source. Start finding these kids in Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Ecuador, Colombia. Start getting these kids at source cheap. We get some Brazilian kid for 2-3 million quid that no one's heard of, but the kid's got ability. We'll murder that championship on a shoestring, and that's what we've got to try and do, is find gems and bargains again.
Well, we found Riyad Mahrez once upon a time when Nigel Pearson raced, so I'm sure we could go and do it again. But I completely agree with Mane. The blueprint, the vision needs to come from the club. It's about organisation as well. We'll add Maddie's word in there about organisation. We need to sign players and managers and scouting around that vision. My worry is they don't know how. This is the issue, isn't it? You've got the people who can't do what is being said. Do you get what I mean? That's the vision, the passion, someone who knows the players that they'll sign in, the vision, the blueprint. Everything that's being said in that comment is what we don't have. And this is what we're not looking at. We're looking at a completely different... I don't even know what we're watching. Do you get what I mean? I don't know how they feel that this is actually the way forward, because it isn't.
Well, I'm a bit at the point where you can say what you like to me. I've heard a lot of people try and sell me a lot of guff. You know, you can say the right words to the blue in the face. I want to see actions that actually match those words.
Damn right.
Don't talk a good game, execute a good game. So stop. So I'll give you a tangible example. Last time we went down, somebody thinks it's a good idea to get Harry Winks and Connor Cody. We both have to. We have to pay them massive wages to come in, and we spent 20 million, which was half of our transfer budget, on these two players. Now, Harry Winks had a good season. Connor Cody, we didn't really need him in the end. We don't need Connor Cody. We never did. We had Ben Nelson. It was silly to get him in the first place. But anyway, look, I get the idea. You get Connor Cody. He's rock solid. He was in the Euro squad or whatever it was recently. He's a good talker. He's good for team spirit. We should guarantee coming up as if we get Connor Cody. What happened? But you forget the guy's not a good enough player. He barely played. If he do go up, he's still not going to be a good enough player. You can't buy an expensive cheerleader on the sideline on 70 grand a week. That's what gets you into PSR trouble. You've got to be able to say no to those signings. So moving forward, don't repeat that. Don't sign anybody from the Premier League who's over 24. Not one player. Because anyone over 24 is going to want decent wages to come down a division. So forget that. No 24-year-olds or above. Just write that off automatically. Don't repeat those mistakes. You saved yourself a fortune already. Now, what are you going to do with that money? What worked last time? Well, Mads Hermansen worked, a young keeper. Fatawu worked, a 19-year-old young winger. Yeah. And to some extent, Mavididi had been around the houses. He was 24 or 25 when we signed him. But you can see Mavididi on his day. I know what you like. He's not consistent at all. But on his hot day, he's pretty hot, right?
Yeah.
And I think he was our second highest scorer in the championship this season we came up. So clearly he had a good season. So when we go for the cheaper, younger, more exciting potential style players, they're cheaper and they actually play better. Yeah, when we go for the more expensive player who's here to guide those younger players through, they don't do dick for us. They take a lot of money. Yeah. They sit there, and in the case of Winks and Vestergaard, they don't even want to live close to the ground, and they'll kick off if you ask them to actually be a bit more committed to the cause. So the old players, they give you the most problem off the pitch. Yeah. They give you the most problem off the pitch if they're not playing. They give you the most problem on the pitch because they're the slowest, the oldest, the worst players that we've got. And they give you a PSR problem because they're the highest earners. Learn the lesson. Don't repeat. Stop spending lots of wages on old players. You get PSR trouble, you get poor performance. Someone in the room needs to be screaming this. Like, no, we are not going to sign any more old guys. It doesn't work. We've got a few old guys left with RU, Cordova, Reed. No one's going to take these guys. So we're stuck with them for a few years. So they'll be our older, experienced pros that will have to teach the youngest. Everyone else is under 24. We're not signing a single player over 24 years old.
Do you think we need to move Martin Glover on? He's the scout, isn't he?
Well, in order to answer that question, let's work out every single signing that was a Martin Glover choice versus what was potentially a managerial choice. Now, I don't have 100% information on which was who, but we think that Bilal, Mads, Fatawu, Mavididi were all Martin Glover signings. So you'd go hit. 4 good ones, right? At least 4 good ones. On the other side, you've got Skip,
Jordan Ayew.
Reed. Reed's a free, so it's not the biggest killer.
Steve Cooper signings, I'm telling you.
They feel like Steve Cooper signings. So
signings because he had Andre Ayew at Forest.
So, yeah. So does that mean that Martin Glover is the one picking good ones and the manager's the one picking the bad ones?
Yeah, Martin Glover's doing a great job. He's brought some good players in. He has.
I would, in order to do that, you'd have to have a one-on-one with Martin Glover and say, Martin, what's going on? Like,
which players were yours and which players was the managers? And I think the managers that sort of you've gone with their Skip and it would be manager signings, but then the other signings of El Canus and that, they're the potential signings of what they are. They're proper Martin Glover signings. Because a lot of scouts look for youth, don't they? Young up and coming prospects a lot of the time.
There's two different profiles you can go for, right? You say, I'm looking for a midfielder, one defensive, one attacking. Yeah. They've got to be 20 to 24. And one can have experience and one you can have without experience. So we've got a balance between the two, right? So the young one you go for is a 20-year-old Moroccan lad from Belgium. Never played in the Premier League. He has done some exciting stuff in the Belgian league and he's played well for Morocco and he had a decent World Cup. So he looks quite exciting, but he's a bit thin. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this kid is going to be able to work in the Premier League, but 20 million quid, the boy's got real talent. Let's give it a go. Okay. Now me, I like that. You know, he's young, he's hungry, he's not on huge salary, because he's coming from such a low base. On the flip side, you sign Oliver Skip. Yeah. His salary base is already much higher. You know, Bilal's probably earning 8-10 grand a week in Belgium. And he's probably earning 30 with us. Oliver Skip's already earning 30 at Spurs. We have to pay him 55 to come to us. It's twice the salary. Half the player. Yeah. And so somebody's given an overweighting to the value of experience and they've not figured out what is about translatable talent. Like, does the guy actually have the ability to play good level football? Now, some people need to wait to see it in the Premier League before they can say, yeah, this guy's good enough. Some people can see it in, you know, an under 17s competition and go, oh my God, it doesn't matter what level this kid's going to play at. He's unbelievable right now. Jude Bellingham, Borussia Dortmund, saw him at Birmingham in the Championship and went, he's good enough to play top-level Bundesliga football immediately. We don't need to wait to see him. We'll pay the money today. So those set of eyes that determine which ones you want and which ones you don't want and why you should choose one style or the other, these are educated business decisions backed up with a lot of good football understanding. And I think that's where we're lacking.
Edouard is definitely not a Martin Glover signing. I'll put it straight to the face with that one. You know, I reckon we've gone out and bloody looked at it as a club and thought, yeah, we need a striker. Daka injured, Vardy injured. We've got to sign a striker. You know, and this with desperation, it's its finest with Edouard. £4.6 million wages. Overall of his year to not even play a lot of minutes. You know, he's enjoyed his holiday in Seagrave and that. So, yeah, fair play to him, you know.
It's not his fault. Somebody offers to pay you 90 grand a week to kick a football around a few times during the day and have the weekend off. Sounds like a good gig to me.
I agree. Let's have a look at the two managers. I'll tell you what, where do you want to start first? Should we start with Danny Rohl or Russell Martin?
You choose.
Right, I'll tell you what, we'll go with Danny Rohl. Style of play. Apparently, it's a fluid approach to tactics, focusing more on ensuring his side shows more attacking intent. For Sheffield Wednesday, went for a 4-2-3-1 and a 3-4-2-1. So, yeah, it's proper Bundesliga football. 89 matches at Sheffield Wednesday, winning 34, losing 36, drawing 19. Came in from Sheffield Wednesday in the 23-24 season. Danny Rohl, I mean, he came into Sheffield Wednesday when there was absolutely rock bottom of the Championship. Looked like they were getting relegated, and they pulled off a great escape for Sheffield Wednesday that season. He's worked on a shoestring budget, Annie, and he's got the best out of what he's got. Obviously, he's had to deal with Chanziri, and he's an owner, let's be honest, which is a difficult thing to sort of mastermind. But would Danny Rohl be the perfect fit for Leicester next season, do you reckon?
I don't know about perfect fit, and he's on the list to interview. So the way I would do it, right? Let's think I was in charge of the process. You narrow it down to your top 3 guys, and with an open mind, you say, you've got to meet the guy. I think I've said this, I don't know whether it's to you or someone else the other day. You know, when you look at a player, you could watch the last 10, 90 minutes, and you could get a good idea of what that player's like. You might not know about him off the pitch, but you could tell a good idea of what he's like, as a player. But as a manager, you could watch the same 10, 90 minutes, but you'll only get half the picture, because football is management anyway, is more than just your setup and your tactics. You've got to know what kind of character he is. What kind of personality does he have? Is he an inspirational character? Will you go to bat for him? Will you run through brick walls for this guy? Or is this guy a bluffer, a bullshitter? Somebody's like, do you know what? This guy bore the hell out of me. Wake me up when he's finished talking, will you? Does he have that? And it's subjective, because what might turn me on might turn you off. I get that. But I think when you look at some of these, certainly brilliant managers, but even levels below that, when you speak to them, they got something about them. So let's go through some of the best ones. Fergie, fire, passion. Wenger, professor. Mourinho, just a brass balls of steel. Pep Guardiola, intensity, high standards, precision. Even some of the younger ones today, Will Still.
Yeah.
You know what? Listen to an interview with Will Still. A very clued up, sharp young man. Now, on the flip side of that, listen to an interview with Steve Cooper. Tell me what you think.
Neil Warnock.
Neil Warnock. Yeah, actually, there is an interview with Neil Warnock and Guardiola.
To get 3 points, Jake.
Do you know what? It's really, you see dinosaur.
I would actually bring, you got to die to get 3 points. Proper Neil Warnock.
In the serious business world, there's a good reason why Neil Warnock has a ceiling that is the Championship at best. He did an interview with Pep Guardiola once, and whilst you've got to massively respect Neil Warnock in lots of ways, for the amazing career that he's had for so many years, and the fire, the passion, he absolutely brings all of that. When it comes to football tactics, mate, that was the reason you didn't actually go on to be a good, decent Premier League manager, is because you weren't in touch with what works at the high level, at the highest end. What your stuff does works to a point, and that's when we go on to Dyche and stuff. Again, it works to a point. Yeah. I just think we've got to be more ambitious than working to a point, because we've actually won silverware. We've won 5 cups in my lifetime. I was there at Hillsborough in 97. I was there in 2000 at Wembley. We beat Tranmere. I've seen us with real trophies at silverware. It's unbelievable what this club can do. So believe again, fearless foxes. Let's start again and build a team that can push for Europe again.
It's about vision. It's where you want the club to be in 5 years' time. What is the plan? And this is what the club's got to get through. Picking this manager now is key to next season in planning for the Championship. But it's where you want to go and the style of football you actually want to see. These players have got to be entertained. They've got to be thinking, you know what? I like this guy. We can work with him. And we can, like you say, go through brick walls for him and show that fight, that passion, the desire to go and win every game possible. That's what you want from your manager to your players, and all get on the same page. You don't want somebody who he starts talking and you think, well, I've seen what you've done previous, mate. This ain't for me.
Think of your times at school, Jack. There are some teachers that bore the hell out of you, and you know what? You're not interested in their class.
You fall off the chair.
Yeah, you're just like, has anyone got any sweets? Hand them around. One person starts coughing, everyone else starts coughing, whatever it is. You're not engaging with what the person is telling you. But there are some teachers when for whatever reason you get on with them, whether they like you or you like them, they believe in you, you believe in them, and when that guy speaks, you listen. You listen, you pay attention, you focus on what he says. But and those kind of characters, when you hear, say, Jurgen Klopp speak, even the guy who won yesterday, whether you love him or you hate him, and his league form is one question, but Ange Postecoglou has a bit of that character about him. When he speaks, you're paying attention. You are paying attention.
That's what I got to do completely. Russell Martin, we spoke, we touched on him yesterday. Not the greatest of football, we'll be honest. Like you said, he's more of an exaggerating bloody Enzo Maresca. He's more lethal of Enzo Maresca's football. Didn't work in the Premier League. It worked to an extent in the Championship, considering we beat them 3 times in his time at Southampton, Russell Martin. So a 12-3 aggregate at Leicester City. Enzo Maresca beat him twice. Steve Cooper beat him. It just isn't what it seems to be. Obviously, he's stubborn. He's this, he's that. Obviously, they say he's a likeable character, but his football just doesn't fit the purpose of the character. So, Russell Martin, what is your stance if you had to choose between the two? And you look at Danny Rohl and Russell Martin. Who, if you was an owner now sitting here and you had to pick between the two, where do you lean more to? Because both are going to have different styles, aren't they? And both are going to offer you different things. Some say the worst appointment would be Russell Martin, but you tell me, which way would you go with it if you can only pick between the two?
I'm a very stubborn person, so I know what it's like to be stubborn. My wife always tells me, I'm not particularly good at changing my opinion on things necessarily. But as a football manager, you have to have an element, at least one, of flexibility about what you're doing. Because if you are just rigid, like this is the plan, whoever we play, home and away, every game, no matter what, teams will work you out pretty soon. They'll know exactly what you're trying to do because there's no variation, there's no change. Now, one of the biggest criticisms the fans had of Enzo was exactly that, right? It's too predictable. It's too standard. We want to see something off the cuff. We want to see a bit of something a bit different. At least now and then, throw it in there just to throw off the opposition, if nothing else. Yeah. And that's the problem. I double checked what I told you yesterday because I remember calling Russell Martin like an extreme Enzo, and I think Loxit sent me. Or it might have been Anil sent a photo in our BTG chat group about possession stats for the Championship season when Enzo took us up. Russell Martin was way more extreme than Enzo, and the data, I promise you, backs all of that up.
Proves it.
Absolutely proves it, and it was actually even bigger a gap than you actually look at that, mad. It was a bigger gap than you might think. So. It's really like extreme possession ball, which I just think when you get to the Premier League, that is those wingers, and particularly in Premier League, because when you've got 3 at the back, you get space out in the wide areas. So what used to be a traditional fullback spot, that's where a gap is. So if you have really, really touchline wingers and keep them wide, you're naturally going to get a centre back who's being pulled out of position, and you can create holes in and outside of him.
Yeah.
So. It's a fairly easy system to play against if you have the players to play against it, but also if the person trying to play the possession style of football doesn't have the very best technical players to do so. And with all due respect to Southampton, they're not Man City.
No.
They're not even Brighton, who play a similar way, but Brighton do it with a mid-level of player, and they're or better than that. Let's say Brighton do it to get you to 10th. Man City do it to get you to the top 4, and Southampton do it to rock bottom. And that is relevant to the quality of players. So there is an argument to say, if we give Russell Martin loads of good signings over the summer, he could do great with it. But the problem is that the style itself with Russell Martin is so much more extreme than Pep or Enzo, it becomes extra predictable to play against.
Martin went to Europe to buy a Lamborghini. Instead, he brought a CDM. His name is Pissing Flint Down.
Not a good player. Like, not he's an okay Championship player, but he's not going to keep you at the Premier League ever.
This is it. You know, you've got to think everything through: the purpose, the plan, the dynamic, the future of the club. Because, like I said early on in the stream before you joined, you can't just have one plan. You've got to have another plan. You can't just go with that one style. You've got to be able to adapt, change when it's not working. Look at Southampton last season when they were losing games. The players were frustrated, like, you know, we've given up here because we don't know what to do. And he's just standing there with his hands in his pockets and that, like, yeah, I'm kind of stuck here. I need help. But this is where you come as a manager, isn't it, Manny? It's what you learn for, to find a different approach, a different sustainability to help you progress when things do get to that stage.
Yeah, you definitely need to be able to make some changes and tweaks. And if you notice that Big Ange, who plays what we used to call suicide ball, right? You know, super high line, gung-ho, you know, jolly ho chaps, follow me, let's go into war and go and attack. Did you see how they played yesterday? Parked the bus yesterday. Big Ange did. Got his goal, parked the bus.
Yeah.
You know, fair play to Ange. He was one of these purist managers that I only played. This is who we are, mate. This is who we play. This is who we are, mate. You know, this is, you know, we're always going to attack. Do you remember that game against Chelsea where they were down to like 9 men and they were just getting battered? Like they were just running through them from they're playing a centre backs on the halfway line with 9 men. You're like, mate, what are you doing? You know what? He did change it yesterday for that cup final, and because I've been quite critical of Russell Martin, I have to give him a bit of credit. That playoff final against Leeds, wasn't it?
He executed it perfectly.
He played defensively.
He did.
He parked the bus.
Against a good Leeds side who had the most attacking probably threat last season in the Championship.
So remember what I said about decent wingers? They had Daniel James and, more importantly, Crescencio Somerville. Yeah. He was cute enough to understand, if I play my usual predictable way, this teams could light me up. You know, it's a one-off cup games are different to league games. That's why you often see like defensive counter-attacking teams doing quite well in cup final games, and not necessarily the possession team that always wins those games. Man City lost to Palace. Tottenham beat Man United yesterday. They're just the latest examples of exactly that. So I'll give him a credit. He did tweak it, change it. So maybe I'm doing him a disservice.
Yeah.
And it's not as bad as I'm making out. I don't want to say it's a nightmare appointment and Russell Martin couldn't get us up. He probably could get us up.
Yeah.
But I think he'll also take us back down again the season after. That's the problem. Yeah. I don't just want to go up. I want to go up with a real fighting chance to stay up.
Yeah, same. So obviously the Telegraph have said he's the front runner for the job. Which obviously there's been little reports of him obviously having talks with the Leicester hierarchy during this week with the Mail Sport and that. The Telegraph have now touched on it. It's where Leicester City go now, isn't it, Manny? With going forward. Obviously, the fans are not behind it, the appointment, but you know, he'd have to win the fans over. I think it'd be that type of situation where he'd have to really start off well if it is to be him. But the thing is, in football, he's got a big job. I think anyone's got a big job at Leicester next season, especially with everything that's going to be going on, PSR and everything like that. It's a challenge, and you know, I don't think any manager likes to be in these challenges. But yeah, maybe
I don't know. You know, I don't know about that, Jack. You know what? When I look at the Leicester job, maybe it's blind because I'm a City fan, but that job looks magic to me. All I see is you got Jeremy Mongers and Jake Evans and Fatawus and Mavididi. You got Ben Nelson at the back. You've got a young keeper in Jakob who's a really rock solid keeper. I actually see a lot of decent young talent coming through and a lot of half decent players there. There's mixed in with, you know, a lot of stuff that needs to be moved on, but if I think, give me 3 years and I'll get rid of those players or they'll run out of contract with time, the older ones, the ones who are on big money and I don't want, suddenly I'll have a budget to build more players to support the names I just mentioned. And Championship was pretty naff last time, mate. When we got relegated, I used to be thinking,
No, what's got?
I hate the Championship. You know what? This league is a grind. It's 46 games. Oh my God, we could be stuck here for 15 years, like Villa, Forest, Leeds, other clubs who have been Sunderland, Sheffield Wednesday. They've been stuck down there for donkeys and couldn't get out. My fears were unfounded. The league was terrible. The teams were awful. Everybody, I mean, Enzo, when he first got, we didn't even play that great the first 5-10 games. We were just sort of going through them. We still won. Well, that league was rubbish. And that's why I think, look, Russell Martin should any manager that we get, honestly, anyone, even my worst nightmare case scenario, Gareth Southgate, that is. That's the lowest I can go. I think could get his top 6 next season. Like, anyone, honestly. But
it all depends on the PSR situation and that now.
But keeping us up, or giving us a good chance to keep, or building a squad that if they can't keep us up, that the next manager could have a good chance of keeping us up. You know, those things go hand in hand. No, that's going to take someone who's got a bit of oomph about a bit of extra about their personality. You know, somebody. You know, I'm a big Tigers fan as well, right? I've loved Tigers. I've been to see Tigers so many times over the years. And when I was a young lad, I had the honour of meeting Martin Johnson. I tell you what, when you meet Martin Johnson, not only is, wow, look at the size of the lad, but he's got something extra about him. He doesn't even know. People say that about him, and I'm not even sure he'd be like, don't be silly. But he's got something extra. He's got a bit of aura. It's an aura. The guy's got an aura. He walks around.
Rude. Aura.
Does he have aura?
We've seen the dance moves at PSV and thought, you know what, this is what we'll see at Leicester when we win. But no, it's just.
No, I mean, like, Martin Johnson was never really a. Yeah, that's true. Well, they might say that about Wayne Rooney until he has a slash stand by the bins outside the pub.
Think will happen and Southgate gets appointed. What's your plans?
Genuinely, unfortunately, I'll be forced to eat it up for the first one game until I see that first team selection, and then he's going to get both barrels, because that is the lowest you could go, in my opinion. I think that would be the positively worst appointment that we could make. But even the worst appointment we would make should be good enough to operating way should be good enough to get us top 6. The only way we should not be getting in the top 6 next season is if you really go ultra ballsy and go, we're going to play 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 17-year-olds pretty much exclusively, with a handful of 22, 23. We're going to have a really super young team. And then a super young team needs seasons to come together. But I don't think they'll ever go down that route.
We'll see what happens. Manny, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Pleasure, mate.
Let everybody know where they can find you, mate.
Blue Tinted Glasses on YouTube if you don't already know. And tune in tomorrow night, 7 p.m. It's the Blue Tinted Glasses end of season award show. Yeah. I've seen some of the clips they're going to be shown tomorrow. It's like a highlights package from the season. Some of it is funny. Particularly Luke is, whether you love him or loathe him, you're going to be entertained probably by what he's got to say. And so yeah, come on, give us a look. Come and give us a like, a subscribe if you haven't already. If you haven't already liked or subscribed, Blue Tinted Glasses, what's wrong with you? Like, where have you been, living under a rock for the last 6 months? But no, we'd love to do a bit of work with Jack and Chris and some of the others, and maybe even educate one or two other fan channels about how to do things too.
Cheers, Manny.
All the best.
Cheers, mate. That was Manny. Good chat. Hope everyone's enjoyed this stream, by the way. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you know and you haven't subscribed around here. Please get down and do so. It helped me out massively. Great in-depth chat. Danny Rohl, Russell Martin. Who next? As Ruud van Nistelrooy is expected to leave Leicester City Football Club. Will the board get it right? Who bloody knows? But hey, thanks for watching as always. Take care. Have a great rest of the day, whatever you're up to. If you're watching this on playback, let me know your thoughts on what everything's been discussed. And yeah, see you soon. Bournemouth away at the weekend. Matchday vlog will be out then. And I'll catch you in the next one. See you later.
Hi all, thank you for watching The Final Whistle. If you enjoy all our content, please remember to smash a like, share and subscribe to the channel.